The schoolyard rang with laughter, sharp and cruel, as Elliot Harper clutched his notebook to his chest, its pages filled with dreams of rockets piercing the sky. Useless gay dad. Useless kid. A voice jeered, and the crowd of teens erupted, their words slicing through the humid Virginia air. At 17, Elliot had learned to let the taunts slide. But today, they stung deeper because tomorrow, his dad, James, would face the town's judgment again. Elliot's sneakers scuffed the gravel as he pushed through the jeering circle, his jaw tight. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for the man who'd raised him alone, the man who'd taught him to sketch constellations before he could spell them. James Harper, 42, was more than a father, was Elliot's hero, even if Cedar Creek High saw him as a punchline. The bell rang, scattering the crowd, but the words lingered. Elliot slipped into the science lab, his sanctuary, where Lila Nguyen was already waiting. At 16, Lila was a firecracker, sharp-tongued, fiercely loyal, with a leather jacket that screamed defiance. "You okay, Elle?" she asked, her dark eyes scanning his face. He nodded, but his grip on the notebook tightened, its edges worn from years of late-night sketches. "I'm fine," he lied, sliding onto a stool. "Just tired of it." Lila didn't push. She never did. Instead, she pulled out her phone, showing him a grainy photo of a rocket launch. "Look at this. The Artemis program. NASA's going back to the moon. Elle, you're going to be part of that someday." Her voice was steady, a lifeline. Elliot managed a small smile, but doubt gnawed at him. Could he really rise above the hate? Cedar Creek, Virginia, was a small town, its heart as rigid as its oak-lined streets. James Harper had moved here a decade ago, a single dad raising Elliot after his partner, Michael, died in a car accident. James was quiet, kind, a carpenter who built furniture with the precision of an engineer. But to the town, he was that gay guy, a label that clung like damp rot. Elliot bore the fallout whispers, snickers, and worse, the pitying looks from teachers who thought he was damaged by his father's choice. That evening, Elliot biked home under a sky bruised with twilight. The Harper house was modest, a single story with a sagging porch, but inside, it was alive with warmth. James was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of chili, his flannel sleeves rolled up. "Rough day?" he asked, not looking up. Elliot hesitated, then nodded. James set the spoon down and pulled him into a hug. "You're stronger than they know, kid," he whispered. Elliot wanted to believe him, but the weight of the town's scorn felt heavier than ever. The next morning, the school buzzed with news. A NASA recruiter was visiting. Cedar Creek High had a robotics team, a scrappy group led by Elliot and Lila, and their latest Projecta lunar rover prototype had caught NASA's eye. The recruiter, Dr. Elena Torres, was coming to see it in action. For Elliot, it was a chance to prove himself, to show the world he was more than the boy with the useless gay dad. But the town had other plans. That afternoon, as Elliot and Lila prepped the rover in the gym, a group of parents gathered outside, led by Karen Wells, a real estate agent with a smile as sharp as her heels. "We don't need NASA glorifying that family," she said loudly, her voice carrying through the open windows. "James Harper's a disgrace, and his kids know better." Elliot froze, his hands trembling as he tightened a screw. Lila's eyes blazed. "Ignore them," she hissed. "They're just noise." The demonstration began, and the gym filled with students, teachers, and a few curious parents. Dr. Torres, a woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense air, watched as Elliot and Lila guided the rover across a mock lunar surface. Its wheels churned smoothly, navigating craters with precision. Elliot's voice cracked as he explained the design, but his passion shone through, each word a defiance of the whispers around him. Dr. Torres nodded, scribbling notes, her expression unreadable. When it was over, she approached Elliot. "You've got talent," she said, her voice low but firm. "But talent's only half the battle. Can you handle the pressure?" Elliot met her gaze, his heart pounding. "Yes, ma'am," he said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. As Dr. Torres left, Karen Wells' voice cut through the crowd. NASA's wasting their time on him. Elliot's stomach twisted, but Lila grabbed his arm. "She's wrong," she said fiercely. "You're going to the stars. Elle. They'll see." That night, Elliot sat on the porch, staring at the sky. James joined him, a mug of coffee in hand. "You did good today," he said softly. "I'm proud of you." Elliot's throat tightened. "What if they're right, Dad? What if I'm not enough?" James set the mug down, his eyes steady. "You're enough, Elliot. You always have been. Don't let their hate steal your dreams." The weeks after the NASA visit were a blur of hope and dread. Elliot threw himself into refining the rover, tweaking its code late into the night, his desk littered with energy drink cans and crumpled graph paper. Lila was his shadow, testing circuits and offering quips to keep his spirits up, but the town's venom grew louder. Flyers appeared on telephone poles, their block letters screaming, "Protect our values. Keep Cedar Creek pure." Elliot tore one down on his way to school, his hands shaking with rage. At school, the robotics team faced sabotage. Someone had loosened the rover's wheels before a practice run, and it spun out, crashing into a wall. The culprit was obvious: Tommy Wells, Karen's son, a senior with a smirk as cruel as his mother's. "Oops," he said, leaning against the gym door. "Guess your little toy can't handle the real world." Lila lunged forward, but Elliot grabbed her arm. "He's not worth it," he muttered, though his fists clenched. Dr. Torres emailed the team, inviting them to a regional NASA competition in Richmond. It was a chance to showcase their rover against top high school teams, with a shot at a summer internship at Langley Research Center. For Elliot, it was more than a prize, it was a lifeline, a way to escape Cedar Creek's suffocating grip. But the town's resistance intensified. At a PTA meeting, Karen rallied parents to block the team's funding, claiming it promoted the wrong values. James attended, his voice calm but firm as he defended Elliot's talent. The room fell silent, but Karen's allies whispered, their eyes cold. Elliot overheard the meeting's fallout at school. "Your dad's a freak," Tommy sneered in the hallway, shoving Elliot against a locker. "NASA's never gonna want you." The words hit harder than the push, but Lila was there in an instant, her voice low and dangerous. "Back off, Tommy, or I'll make you." He laughed but retreated, his cronies trailing behind. Lila turned to Elliot, her expression softening. "Don't let him in your head, Elle. You're better than this place." The night before the Richmond trip, James sat Elliot down at the kitchen table. "I know it's hard," he said, his voice thick. "When Michael died, I thought I'd never survive the pain. But you gave me a reason to keep going. You're my strength, Elliot. And now, you're going to show the world what you can do." Elliot's eyes stung, but he nodded, clutching the NASA patch James had sewn onto his backpack. Richmond was a whirlwind. The competition hall buzzed with teams from across Virginia, their rovers gleaming under fluorescent lights. Elliot and Lila's rover, dubbed Starbound, stood out for its simplicity, a lightweight frame with a custom navigation algorithm Elliot had coded himself. Dr. Torres was there, her sharp eyes scanning every detail. As the trials began, Elliot's nerves frayed. Their first run was flawless, but during the second, a rival team's rover collided with Starbound, damaging a sensor. The crowd gasped, and Tommy, in the audience with his team, smirked. Lila cursed under her breath, but Elliot stayed calm, rerouting the rover's code on the fly. His fingers flew across the laptop, sweat beading on his forehead. Starbound recovered, navigating the final obstacle with a grace that drew applause. Dr. Torres approached after the round, her expression impressed. Quick thinking, she said. Most kids would have panicked. Elliot's chest swelled, but doubt lingered. Could he really belong in a world like NASA's? Back in Cedar Creek, the team's success sparked a firestorm. Karen organized a town hall, demanding the school cut ties with NASA's agenda. James attended, his shoulders squared, but the crowd's hostility was palpable. "We don't need your kind here," a man shouted. Elliot, watching from the back, felt his heart lurch. He wanted to scream, to defend his dad, but fear held him silent. Lila grabbed his hand, her grip fierce. "We're not done fighting," she whispered. That night, Elliot found James on the porch, staring at the stars. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said, his voice breaking. "I hate that you have to go through this because of me." James shook his head, his eyes soft. "It's not because of you, El. It's because of them. And we're going to prove them wrong together." The Richmond competition had lit a spark in Elliot, but Cedar Creek's venom threatened to smother it. The school board, under pressure from Karen and her allies, slashed the robotics team's budget, forcing Elliot and Lila to scrounge for parts at thrift stores and junkyards. They worked late in Lila's garage, surrounded by rusted tools and the hum of a space heater, their breath visible in the chilly air. "This town's trying to bury us," Lila muttered, soldering a wire. Elliot nodded, but his focus was on Starbound, its frame battered but unbowed. Dr. Torres emailed again, offering mentorship for the national NASA competition in Houston. It was a dream, a chance to present Starbound to NASA's top engineers, but the cost of travel was steep. James took extra carpentry jobs, his hands calloused from late-night work, but the funds were still short. Elliot felt guilt gnaw at him. Every dollar spent was another burden on his dad. "We'll find a way," James said, his voice steady. "You're not giving up." The town's hostility escalated. One night, Elliot woke to shattering glass of brick through their living room window, wrapped in a note, "Freaks don't belong here." James called the police, but the officer, a friend of Karen's, shrugged it off. "Kids being kids," he said. Elliot's blood boiled, but James remained calm, sweeping up the glass. "They're scared of what they don't understand," he said. "Keep your eyes on the stars, El." Lila rallied the robotics team, launching a crowdfunding campaign to cover Houston's costs. To their surprise, donations poured in not from Cedar Creek, but from strangers online, moved by Elliot's story of resilience. A queer advocacy group shared their campaign, calling him a beacon of hope. The support felt like a lifeline, but it also drew more hate. Tommy and his friends defaced the school's robotics lab, spray painting slurs across the walls. Elliot scrubbed them off, his hands shaking, Lila at his side. "They're losing," she said. "That's why they're loud." Houston was a revelation. The competition hall was vast, filled with teams from across the country, their rovers sleek and high-tech. Starbound looked out of place, its patched-together frame a testament to grit over glamour. Elliot's nerves churned as he and Lila set up, but Dr. Torres' presence steadied him. She introduced them to Dr. Raj Patel, a NASA engineer who'd faced his own battles as a minority in the field. You've got heart, Patel told Elliot, clapping his shoulder. That's what makes a great engineer. The competition was brutal. Starbound held its own, navigating obstacles with precision, but a software glitch in the final round nearly cost them. Elliot's hands shook as he debugged the code under the clock's pressure, Lila whispering encouragement. They fixed it just in time, and Starbound crossed the finish line to cheers. They placed third, a miracle for a small-town team, but Dr. Patel pulled Elliot aside. Your rover's ingenuity caught our eye, he said. We're offering you a summer internship at Langley. You in? Elliot's heart soared. But back in Cedar Creek, the victory was bittersweet. Karen's campaign grew uglier, targeting James directly. Flyers called him a danger to the town's youth, and a petition circulated to bar him from school events. James took it in stride, but Elliot saw the toll in his dad's tired eyes. At a team celebration, Lila raised a toast to Elliot, who's going to NASA despite this hellhole. The team cheered, but Elliot's smile faltered. He wanted to escape, but leaving James to face the hate alone felt like betrayal. That night, Elliot found a letter from Michael, tucked in an old book James had given him. It was written before the accident, full of love for James and hope for Elliot's future. You're our star, Michael wrote. Shine bright, no matter what. Tears fell as Elliot read, his resolve hardening. He wouldn't just fight for himself, fight for his dad, for Michael, for every kid who felt like they didn't belong. The internship offer from NASA was a beacon, but Cedar Creek's darkness loomed larger. Elliot's days were split between preparing for Langley and shielding James from the town's escalating cruelty. Karen's petition gained traction, and the school board scheduled a vote to ban James from campus events. Elliot overheard teachers whispering, their pitying looks now tinged with agreement. It's for the kid's sake, one said. Elliot's stomach churned. Was the kid they were protecting, and it felt like a knife. Lila, ever the strategist, suggested they fight back with visibility. Let's show them who James really is, she said, her eyes blazing. They organized a community showcase for the robotics team, inviting local media to highlight Starbound's success and James's role as a supportive dad. Elliot hesitated. Exposing James to more scrutiny felt risky, but his dad agreed. I'm not ashamed of who I am, James said, his voice firm. And I'm damn proud of you. The showcase was held in the school gym, transformed with star-themed decorations and posters of NASA missions. Elliot and Lila presented Starbound, their voices steady as cameras flashed. James stood in the back, his smile quiet but proud. The crowd was mixed. Some clapped, others whispered, and Karen's group sat stone-faced. When a reporter asked Elliot about his inspiration, he looked at James. My dad taught me to dream big, he said, his voice cracking. He's the strongest person I know. The room fell silent, and for a moment, Elliot felt the tide shift. But Karen wasn't done. She cornered the reporter after, spinning lies about James's influence on the team. The next day, a local blog ran a hit piece, calling James a distraction and questioning Elliot's qualifications. The comments section exploded with hate, and Elliot's hope flickered. He wanted to scream, to tear the town apart, but Lila kept him grounded. They're scared because you're winning, she said. Keep going. The school board meeting was a battleground. Karen spoke first, her voice dripping with faux concern. We're protecting our community's values, she said, her eyes flicking to James. Elliot stood to speak, his hands trembling but his voice clear. My dad's not a threat. He's the reason I'm going to NASA. He's the reason I believe in myself. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, and a few parents clapped. The vote was close, but the band failed. For the first time, Elliot felt the town's grip loosen. As summer approached, Elliot prepared for Langley. James helped him pack, slipping a photo of Michael into his bag. He'd be so proud, James said, his eyes misty. Elliot hugged him tightly, the weight of their shared fight settling into something like hope. But on the eve of his departure, tragedy struck. A fire broke out at James's workshop, destroying his tools and months of work. The police called it an accident, but Elliot saw Tommy's smirk at school and knew better. Lila and the team rallied, helping James rebuild. They salvaged what they could, and the community touched by Elliot's speech-donated supplies. It wasn't enough to erase the loss, but it was a start. As Elliot boarded the bus to Langley, James pulled him close. "You're not just my son," he said. "You're my hero." Elliot's throat tightened, but he nodded, determined to make his dad proud. At Langley, Elliot was a fish out of water. The other interns were polished, confident, from schools with bigger budgets and fewer battles. Dr. Patel mentored him closely, pushing him to refine Starbound's design for a NASA testbed. Elliot thrived, his late nights fueled by coffee and dreams of the stars. But letters from home kept him grounded. James wrote of small victories, like a neighbor apologizing for past slights. Cedar Creek was changing, slowly. Langley was a world away from Cedar Creek, a sprawling campus of glass and steel where Elliot's dreams felt tangible. He spent his days in labs, surrounded by engineers who spoke in equations and possibilities. Starbound's design evolved under Dr. Patel's guidance, its navigation system now a prototype for NASA's lunar missions. Elliot's confidence grew, but late at night, he'd read James's letters, each one a reminder of the fight waiting back home. Cedar Creek wasn't done with them. Karen's group, humiliated by the failed ban, shifted tactics, targeting James's business. Clients canceled orders, citing community standards, and James's income dwindled. Elliot learned of it during a call with Lila, her voice tight with anger. "They're boycotting him. It's disgusting." Elliot's heart sank, was chasing his dream, but at what cost to his dad? He threw himself into his work, determined to make the internship count. Dr. Patel noticed his intensity. "You're carrying something heavy," he said one day, leaning against a lab bench. Elliot hesitated, then told him about Cedar Creek, the hate, the fire. Patel listened, his face unreadable. "I grew up in a place like that," he said finally. "You don't just fight for yourself, you fight for everyone who comes after you." Elliot's project caught NASA's attention. Starbound's navigation system was selected for a test run on a lunar simulator, a rare honor for an intern. The day of the test, Elliot stood in the control room, his palms sweaty as engineers monitored Starbound's performance. It navigated flawlessly, its data streaming across screens. Dr. Torres clapped him on the back. "You've got a future here," she said. Elliot's chest swelled, but his thoughts were with James, alone in Cedar Creek. Back home, Lila organized a counter-campaign, rallying supporters to buy James's furniture. A local cafe displayed his work, and orders trickled in. James wrote to Elliot, his words upbeat but strained. "Don't worry about me, kid. Focus on the stars." But Elliot couldn't shake the guilt. He called Lila, his voice breaking. "I should be there, helping him." Lila was firm. "You're helping him by succeeding. Show them what you're made of." The internship's final week brought a surprise. NASA invited Elliot to present Starbound at a national conference in D.C. It was a chance to meet top engineers and secure a recommendation for college. But the same week, Cedar Creek's town council planned a vote on a family values ordinance, a thinly veiled attack on James. Elliot faced a choice: stay at Langley and chase his dream, or return home to stand with his dad. He chose home. The bus ride back was long, the Virginia countryside blurring past. When he arrived, James was stunned. "You didn't have to come back," he said, his voice thick. Elliot hugged him. "Yeah, I did. You've always been there for me. Now it's my turn." Lila met them at the town hall, her eyes fierce. "Let's do this," she said, linking arms with Elliot. The council meeting was packed, the air thick with tension. Karen spoke first, her voice smooth as she pushed the ordinance. Elliot stood, his heart pounding. "This isn't about values," he said, his voice carrying. "It's about hate. My dad's the best man I know, and you're trying to punish him for who he is. I'm going to NASA, and I'm doing it because of him." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others glaring. James's eyes shone with pride. The ordinance failed, narrowly. Cedar Creek wasn't healed, but it was a start. Elliot returned to Langley for the conference, his resolve stronger. He presented Starbound with passion, earning a standing ovation. Dr. Patel pulled him aside after. "You're not just an engineer," he said. "You're a leader." Elliot nodded, thinking of James, of Michael, of every fight they'd won together. Back in Cedar Creek, the failed ordinance marked a turning point, but the scars remained. Elliot's return from Langley was bittersweet, earned NASA's respect, but James's workshop was still recovering from the fire. Lila and the team kept the momentum going, organizing a fundraiser to rebuild. The community showed up, some out of guilt, others out of newfound respect. A neighbor who'd once shunned James brought a check, muttering an apology. James accepted it with grace, but Elliot saw the weariness in his dad's eyes. School resumed, and Elliot faced senior year with a new fire. His NASA internship had secured him a scholarship offer from MIT, but the town's whispers hadn't stopped. Tommy and his crew still lurked, their taunts quieter but no less venomous. One day, Tommy cornered Elliot in the parking lot, his voice low. "You think you're hot stuff now, huh? NASA boy." Elliot stood tall, his voice steady. "I'm not scared of you anymore." Tommy backed off, but the threat lingered. Lila pushed Elliot to focus on the future. "You're getting out of here," she said, tinkering with a new rover design in her garage. "But you gotta promise to take me with you when you're building moon bases." Elliot laughed, the first real laugh in weeks. Lila's loyalty was his anchor, her defiance a mirror of his own. They spent nights planning, dreaming of a world beyond Cedar Creek's narrow streets. James, meanwhile, found unexpected allies. A local pastor, Reverend Hayes, reached out after the ordinance vote, inviting James to speak at a community forum on inclusion. James hesitated, had never been one for the spotlight, but Elliot urged him on. "You've been fighting for me my whole life," he said. "Let them hear you." The forum was tense, with Karen's group in attendance, but James's words were steady. "I just want to raise my son in peace," he said. "Isn't that what we all want?" The room was split, but a few nodded, their faces softening. Elliot's MIT application loomed, and with it, the reality of leaving James. He spent evenings on the porch, sketching rockets while James whittled beside him. "You're going to change the world, kid," James said one night, his voice soft. Elliot's throat tightened. "What about you, Dad?" "I don't want to leave you here." James smiled, his eyes on the stars. "I'll be fine. You're my legacy, El." The national conference had opened doors. Dr. Torres emailed, offering Elliot a part-time role at Langley during college breaks. It was a dream, but it meant splitting his time between Boston and Virginia. Lila, now applying to engineering programs, vowed to visit. "We're a team," she said, punching his shoulder. "No matter where you go." Elliot nodded, but the weight of leaving Cedar Creek and its unresolved battles pressed on him. One night, a letter arrived from NASA, addressed to both Elliot and James. It was an invitation to a gala honoring young innovators, with Elliot as a guest speaker. The catch, it was in Cedar Creek, a symbolic gesture to celebrate local talent. Elliot's stomach churned. Returning to the town's spotlight felt like walking into a lion's den. But James was resolute. "We do this together," he said. "Let them see us." The gala was held in the town square, under a canopy of twinkling lights. Elliot stood at the podium, his NASA patch gleaming on his jacket. He spoke of Starbound, of dreams, of his dad's unwavering support. "They called him useless," he said, his voice steady. "But he's the reason I'm here." The crowd was silent, then erupted in applause. Not all, but enough. James stood in the back, tears in his eyes, as Dr. Torres shook his hand. Karen was there, her face tight, but she said nothing. For the first time, Elliot felt the town's hate shrink, overshadowed by something stronger: hope. He looked at James, at Lila, at the stars above, and knew this was only the beginning. The gala was a victory, but Cedar Creek's wounds ran deep. Elliot's speech had swayed some, but Karen's allies doubled down, spreading rumors that James had manipulated NASA's favor. The harassment grew quieter, but more insidious. Tires on James's truck. Anonymous letters slipped under their door. Elliot's MIT acceptance arrived, a golden ticket out, but each triumph felt like a step away from his dad. Lila sensed his struggle. "You're not abandoning him," she said, helping him pack for Boston. "You're carrying him with you." She'd been accepted to Virginia Tech's engineering program, a compromise to stay close to her family. Their late-night talks turned to plans: Elliot at MIT, Lila at Tech, both dreaming of NASA. But Elliot couldn't shake the fear that Cedar Creek would break James without him. James, though, was resilient. He rebuilt his workshop with community help, his furniture now in demand beyond Cedar Creek. Reverend Hayes's forum had sparked a small movement, with a few locals forming an inclusion group. James joined, his voice steady as he shared his story. "I lost Michael," he told them. "I won't lose my son to hate." Elliot, watching from the sidelines, felt pride swell as Dad was fighting, too. At MIT, Elliot dove into aerospace engineering, his days a blur of lectures and labs. He Skyped James weekly, sharing stories of Boston's bustle and his latest projects. James's letters arrived regularly, filled with encouragement and sketches of furniture inspired by constellations. But one call changed everything. "They're trying to run me out," James said, his voice low. A developer, backed by Karen, was pressuring him to sell his property for a family-friendly project. Elliot's blood ran cold. "I'm coming home," he said. He arrived to find James defiant but worn. The developer's offer was generous, but it came with a threat: sell or face legal battles. Lila rallied the inclusion group, and they organized a protest at the town hall. Dozens showed up, holding signs: "James stays." Elliot spoke, his voice raw. "This is our home. You don't get to erase us." The crowd cheered, and the developer backed off, but the victory felt fragile. Elliot returned to MIT, his focus sharper. He poured his anger into a new projectile lunar habitat design, inspired by James's resilience. Dr. Patel, visiting MIT, was impressed. This is lead engineer material, he said, offering Elliot a spot on a NASA research team post-graduation. Elliot's heart raced, but his thoughts were with Cedar Creek. He wanted to succeed, not just for himself, but to prove the town wrong. Back home, James faced a new challenge. Tommy, now a college freshman, returned for winter break, stirring trouble. He and his friends vandalized James's workshop again, spray painting slurs. This time, the police acted, thanks to Reverend Hayes's influence. Tommy was arrested, and Karen's reputation took a hit. James didn't glow the rebuild. Again, with Elliot and Lila helping over break. "You're my rock," James told them, his voice steady. Elliot's final MIT semester was a whirlwind. His lunar habitat won a national award, and NASA invited him to lead a team at Langley after graduation. The offer was a dream, but it meant leaving James for good. On a call, James sensed his hesitation. "You've fought for me," he said. "Now fight for your future. I'll be here, cheering you on." Elliot nodded, tears falling. He was ready to soar, but he'd never forget where he came from. Graduation day at MIT was electric, the air buzzing with possibility. Elliot stood in his cap and gown, James and Lila in the crowd, their faces beaming. James wore a new flannel, a NASA pin on his chest, a gift from Elliot. Lila, now a sophomore at Virginia Tech, had driven up, her leather jacket swapped for a blazer, but her fierce grin unchanged. As Elliot accepted his diploma, he caught their eyes, his heart full. This was for them. Back in Cedar Creek, the town had shifted. Karen's influence waned after Tommy's arrest, and the inclusion group grew, hosting events that drew curious locals. James's workshop thrived. His furniture now shipped nationwide, each piece etched with a star. But the scars of hate lingered. Elliot saw it in the occasional glance, the hushed whispers. He knew change was slow, but it was real. Elliot joined NASA as a lead engineer. His first project, a lunar navigation system based on Starbound. Langley felt like home, its labs a canvas for his dreams. Dr. Patel mentored him, pushing him to innovate. "You're not just building tech," he said. "You're building a legacy." Elliot nodded, thinking of James, of Michael, of every kid in a small town who felt like they didn't belong. He visited Cedar Creek often, helping James with the workshop and speaking at schools about engineering and acceptance. Lila joined him when she could, her own career taking off. One evening, they sat on the Harper porch, the sky ablaze with stars. James raised a glass of lemonade. "To you, Elle," he said. "You proved them wrong." Elliot shook his head. "We proved them wrong, Dad." NASA named Elliot's team lead on a new Artemis mission, a lunar rover set to launch in 2027. The announcement made national news, and Cedar Creek's paper ran a front-page story, "Local boy to lead NASA mission." The article mentioned James, calling him a father who never gave up. Elliot framed it, hanging it in the workshop beside Michael's photo. At the launch site, years later, Elliot stood with James and Lila, watching the rover lift off. The rocket's roar echoed his heartbeat, a culmination of every fight, every tear, every dream. As it pierced the sky, James squeezed his shoulder. "You did it, kid." Elliot smiled, tears in his eyes. "We did it." The stars above shone brighter, a testament to their journey. Cedar Creek hadn't defined them, it had forged them. Elliot, James, and Lila had faced hate and emerged stronger, their bond a beacon for others. The boy mocked for his useless gay dad had reached the moon, not just for himself, but for every heart that dared to dream.